How are you going there today? Now, it's a rainy day. We're not going outside. I'm going to go through some stuff inside with you today. Now, the purpose of today's video ultimately is about sharing with you something that's really important to me and something that I really appreciate and value. Now, I'm a visual person and I'm quite interested in doing visual things. And that includes art, drawing, painting, all those sort of things. Now, you can see on the wall around me here a couple of my pieces of art. And these are things that I like to do. And one of the ways that I like to do it is when I'm in the bush. I like to go out and do sketching or painting outside. There's a few videos already on the channel you can have a look at and see some of those. And as I've mentioned before, we're going to delve into that a little bit more. So that's the purpose of today's video. If you look here on the screen behind me, you can see there's a picture there of a hut. That's a picture of Mulligans Hut in the Gibraltar Ranges National Park. Where I've walked a few times. Again, there's videos on the channel about that if you want to check them out. Gibraltar's Range National Park is a visually stunning place, and I've chosen this hut today as it's one of the things that I really like about it. It's got history, it's got character, it's got a bit of bush and so on. And what am I going to do? I'm actually going to show you a simple way that you can make a drawing of these type of places. So it's not always great weather. You don't always have the time to go out and do bushwalking and so on, but you can bring those memories back and you can create something memorable and something enjoyable out of those excursions and experiences that you have. And if you'd like to learn how to do that, well, that's what this lesson today is going to be all about. If not, you can just fast forward to the end of the video and check out how the drawing went, and I'll see you at the end. Now, a brief note, if you're going to use this video as a lesson, I'll show you what to do, and then there'll be a note come up on the screen saying pause the video now. So that's the point at which you would pause the video and complete the drawing for yourself. You don't need much gear here. A couple of pencils, a piece of paper, an eraser and a sharpener. That's all the gear you'll need for any of these lessons. I'm going to put up 6 or 8 of these. We'll see how we go with them over time, but it'll just be an opportunity for you to learn how to do some drawing, and then we'll do some more videos in the future where we go outside and we do some live sketching out in nature. Anyway, without further ado, I'll jump to the lesson. Thank you. Start by drawing a horizontal line across the middle of the page. It is usually helpful to draw in a few lines like this at the beginning to help define the areas of the drawing and locate key features. Draw in additional horizontal lines above and below the original line to mark the top and the bottom of the hut. Then draw 2 vertical lines in near the edges of the paper to mark the sides. Don't stress about making the lines perfect. You don't need to get a ruler. Just draw the lines in using the techniques that you've already practiced. These include drawing short sections with light feathery lines and starting at a set place and looking at where you want to go before you draw it in. Draw in the shape of the roof of the hut. Draw another horizontal line just above the centre line that you drew in. This will be the bottom of the roof. The top line you already drew will be the top of the roof. The top part of the roof is narrower than the bottom part, and so you will connect the 2 horizontal lines with diagonal lines. As you can see in the demonstration, if you aren't happy with something, grab the eraser and change it. Draw the lines slightly darker than the original construction lines to make them easier to see. You don't need to press hard, just slightly harder than you were before. Now draw 2 vertical lines in to define the edges of the hut. Start these just inside the bottom line of the roof and drop them down to connect with the lower horizontal line that you drew at the start. Finally, draw in a darker line across the bottom of the hut. This is your opportunity to straighten that line if you need to. Don't worry if it isn't perfectly straight. Every time you practice this skill, you will get better. Next, draw in the doorway of the hut. Use 2 vertical lines to make the shape of a rectangle. The doorway takes the entire space between the roof of the hut and the floor. Then draw in the window on the right side of the doorway. Use the same techniques as before to draw a square close to the top of the wall using the original centre line as the top of the window. To get the window on the left at the same height, draw a very faint horizontal line across to get the bottom edge and then draw in the square shape of the window on the left of the hut. Now you have the basic shapes of the hut complete. It's time to clean up the page a bit. Grab the eraser and remove all the faint construction lines you've used so far at the top of the drawing and inside the outline of the hut. Leave the centre line in place behind the hut as it will be needed again soon. Draw the chimney in at the right side of the hut. This will be a combination of straight and curving lines. For today, just draw in the basic shape. We will cover three-dimensional forms in a future section of the course. The chimney is slightly taller than the roof and fits neatly up against the wall at the bottom where it gets wider. Note that the bottom of the chimney is slightly higher than the bottom wall of the hut. How much does a chimney cost? Nothing. It's on the house. Make the line at the very top of the roof a little bit darker. Then slightly underneath, draw another parallel line. This is to represent the ridge cap on the roof. Use the eraser to tidy it up if you get wayward with your lines, like I did in the demonstration. With a rustic hut like this, it is common for there to be faults present, so don't worry too much if your drawing has a few extra bumps or wobbles. Just do your best and enjoy the process. Draw the line at the bottom of the roof slightly darker, then draw a wavy line just above and parallel to it. Draw this in short sections and try to be consistent in the size of the waves in the line. This will represent the corrugations in the roof iron, and the waves will add energy and character to the drawing. Draw some lines on the roof to represent the corrugations across the surface of the sheets of roofing iron. These are contour lines and will show the contours of the iron. At the side, these will run parallel to the angle of the diagonal sides of the roof. In the centre of the roof, they will be vertical. In the demonstration, I've started the diagonal sections at each side and put the vertical section in the middle before filling in the rest of the roof area. This gives me a visual guide of the angles to aim for. If I just did this from left to right, I would never get all the angles correct, and we would end up with straight lines where there should be angles and vice versa. Use a combination of short lines and longer ones to add variation to the roof surface. Once you've filled in the roof surface, draw another wavy line at the top of the iron under the ridge cap. This will complete the representation of the corrugations. Between the corrugated iron and the bottom horizontal line of the roof, start drawing in a series of short vertical lines close to each other. This is a technique called hatching, and it's a simple form of shading. We will cover shading more fully in future lessons. Fill the entire length with these lines. They represent a darker area between the roof and the gutter that hangs underneath to catch the rainwater. Finish the gutter by drawing in another horizontal line underneath the darker area. Clean this up with the eraser if you need to. Now return to the walls of the hut. Add some additional darkness to the edge of the wall and start drawing in vertical lines to represent the boards. These boards would have been hand cut and will not be consistent in width or perfectly straight, so don't make them perfect in your drawing. As you get to each window opening, draw the shapes of the wooden shutters. Each shutter is at a slightly different angle, but note that the top of each one is more or less horizontal, but the bottom is diagonal. This is due to a process called perspective, and there will be more on this later in the course. The shutters have horizontal braces on the inside edge of each one. Work your way across until you get to the other side of the hut and have drawn in 4 shutters. Note that by the time you finish this section, the lines in the hut walls and roof should be of a consistent darkness. This helps tie everything together and helps you balance the drawing. Now draw a few knots in the surface of the boards. These are just a pair of curving lines with a small circular or elliptical line inside. You don't need a lot of them, but these will just add an organic look to the timber planks. Remember that circular lines are more natural and organic. Next, draw in some fainter, curving lines to represent the timber grain in the planks. These lines should be closer together across the top of the walls and further apart in the lower part of the wall. You will note that in the demonstration I've drawn them over the top of my gutter. No big deal. If you make a similar mistake, just grab the eraser and clean it up. Continue across the surface of the hut and draw some lines on all the planks. Allow some variation between different parts and this will look more natural. Now return to the chimney and begin drawing a series of horizontal lines down the length of it. Try to make them consistent, but don't stress if they aren't perfect. The rustic appearance of the hut will forgive a few that are bigger or smaller than the others. Now return to the top of the chimney and in the spaces between the horizontal lines, begin drawing vertical lines to represent the edges of the bricks. Remember that each layer of bricks will be laid so that the gap between the two bricks will always be supported by a whole brick underneath and on top. As you get to the part of the chimney that curves, you can slightly round the outer edge to provide a more natural look. Even though this may not be true to life, it's an example of how you can make a constructed geometric object look more organic in your drawing. Returning to the shutters and windows, add some short diagonal and vertical lines to the shutters. Make these lines lighter on the surface of the shutter and darker underneath the braces. Sharpen up any edges that are getting lost to keep the shutters separate from the wall. Next, move to the window opening and begin a series of short vertical lines across the top. These will be similar to the ones that you drew under the roofing iron, only should be so close together there is very few visible gaps between the lines. Draw similar lines around the edge of the shutters and continue along the bottom of the opening. Try not to let too many go outside the edge of the window, but if some do, you can always tidy them up with your eraser. Finally, fill in the middle of the window opening by drawing more lines to cover all the gaps. The end result should be a consistent set of lines that create the appearance of darkness inside the hut. Continue across to the door and repeat the process. You will need to do the long opening of the doorway in a number of sections. Finally, complete the right-hand window in the same way. You can use some horizontal lines to tidy up the top and the bottom of the windows and the doors. Take a look at your drawing and see if the walls and the roof balance. And by this, I mean, do they look like they are all part of the same building? If not, carefully look at the reference and see what you can adjust to improve it. To finalise the hut now, return to the roof and draw in some varied diagonal lines in a few places. These will represent leaves and twigs that have fallen onto the roof. Make some lines lighter and some lines darker to add variety to this. Now at the top of the page, draw in some vertical and diagonal tree trunks. Use the same technique as before, short, feathery lines, and look where you want the line to go. Use the centre line that you drew at the start of the drawing as the bottom edge of the background trees and bushes. Some of the tree trunks can be straight, some can have slight bends in them. As you draw in the second line to create the tree trunk, take care not to let it balloon out and create large bumps. Keep the lines parallel, and if you need it, just use the eraser. Finally, draw in a few curved lines to indicate the shapes of bushes and foliage in amongst the trees. Draw a few loosely curving lines lightly down the tree trunks. Vary these from tree to tree, with some being darker and some being lighter. Keep them all lighter than the dark parts of the house. Next, add in some patches of multi-directional lines around the foliage. These will indicate darker areas or places where one type overlaps another. You can make these marks more quickly, as accuracy is less important. Have fun and enjoy this process. The more diagonal lines will add energy and movement, while the horizontal lines will ground sections. The vertical sections will create the impression of towering trees and strong growth. Overlap some horizontal and vertical lines in front of the doorway of the hut. This represents the area worn away from many footfalls over the years. Draw a variety of vertical and diagonal lines along the bottom of the hut and the chimney to create the effect of grass and weeds growing there. Add a lighter row just above the centre line to create a boundary between the heavier growth behind and the light areas around the hut. Using the side of the pencil tip, add some scribbled diagonal lines to the ground around the hut. Keep this quite light and move around the whole area on both sides and in front of the hut. Alternate areas of scribble with areas of none. The intention is to create a mixture of horizontal and diagonal patches of light and patches where there are none. This will help represent the dappled shadows cast on the ground by some of the surrounding trees and bushes. Draw the shape of a few sticks on the ground in a few places. This is a way of adding interesting details to the bottom of the drawing, also known as the foreground. The sticks can be combined with short rows of vertical and diagonal lines to create the effect of grass. You can create indirect lines with these tools that can build arrows to help lead the viewer around the drawing or point towards something that you want them to focus on. Adding horizontal rows of grass and sticks will also add to the sense of calm in the scene, and creating diagonal rows will add drama and excitement. Feel free to experiment. If you don't like the result, just erase it and try again. If there's anything else that you think needs more attention in your drawing, now is the time to fix it. Pause the video and finish your drawing now. Well done and congratulations. Sign your drawing and give yourself a well-deserved pat on the back. You've earned it. I will now give you a short recap on what you've just achieved in this drawing. You've used horizontal, vertical and diagonal lines to capture the structure of the hut. You've used curving, vertical, horizontal and diagonal lines to give it character. Finally, you used all the line types to add a background and a foreground to place the hut in a setting and tell more of its story. While this is a relatively simple drawing at first glance, there is actually a whole lot going on here. And when you look at what you've just achieved, that's why I say well done. You've really earned it. That's the end of this lesson. How did you go? You go doing all right with that lesson? I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that the lesson was useful for you. If you did like it or enjoy it, I'd appreciate if you'd leave me a comment below so that I know whether to pursue this more fully in the future or not. Either way, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate having you with me, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.